right, AFTERSHOCKS TV. Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's episode, where as always we feature the best underground hard rock and metal artists on the planet. And on today's episode, we're heading down to the Lone Star State from Dallas, Texas. We'd like to welcome our guests from psychedelic doom heavyweights Wolfat. We're joined by guitarist, vocalist Kent Stump. Kent, how are you, man? Thanks for coming on AFTERSHOCKS.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Thanks, man. No, I appreciate it. So yeah, let's get right into it. A lot going on in the Wolfat camp right now. Let's start off with the Singularity. It's the band's 7th studio release. It comes out May 6th on Ripple. And it's your guys' first studio release since 2016's Midnight Cometh. And I know currently you got 2 singles out there. You got The Witching Chamber and Orphans of the Singe that just came out. 2 tracks that definitely will please every Wolfat fan, I believe, out there. You know, this record, I mean, it's just the longest time span between full lengths too for you guys, and I'm gonna venture a guess that the pandemic had something to do with it. So I guess Kent, start us off by talking a bit about the making of the Singularity and how good it must feel to get this release out after 6 years since Midnight Cometh.
It's actually I'm really happy that we finally did get it done. You know, the pandemic was part of it, and you know, I don't know, there's a lot of things, just kind of life in general. Some things kind of just ended up taking longer, but you know, some of the writing for this actually began probably 2016, 2017. In fact, Orphans of the Singe was the first song that was written for this album.
Oh, okay.
But you know, like we got a new bass player in 2016, Zach Busby, and you know, it's just some turmoil before, like right around there before that. And you know, so when Zach joined the band, you know, we didn't really. It took us a while to get back into kind of the creative mindset, you know, because we were thinking more about, you know, playing gigs and getting Zach like fully on board with the existing songs, and then for whatever reason, yeah, like I don't know, it just kind of things, just life in general. It was just kind of a slower process this time of writing, and you know, the plan actually was originally to have things done like summer of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And that kind of obviously derailed things quite a bit, but in a way it was kind of good because it allowed, you know, there were a couple songs that were written after that pandemic started, so it kind of just allowed more time to think about things, and you know, and allowed time for some stuff to sort of gel and you know, creatively in terms of the writing and the concept of the album. So I don't know, but I feel good. I mean, I'm feel good about it being done finally, and I know a lot of people have been waiting on it, so I'm glad that it's finally going to come out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you just alluded to something too right there about the band's personnel. I mean, I know there are some changes in the band right now. I know you've got, you said you got a new bassist that's replacing Zach, Patrick Smith, and now you've obviously reverted back to a 4-piece. Now you brought back the original guitarist, Matt Watkins. So I guess talk about the new lineup and how did Matt wind up coming back into the fold after so many years being away?
Well, so Matt originally played. Matt's an old friend of mine, and you know, when we first started the band, we actually started jamming way back in like 2003, 2004, and Matt was jamming with us back then, and as a 4-piece, and he played on the first 4 songs that we ever recorded, which would have been From Beyond, From Beyond, Manchurian Syndrome, Company Man, and what was the other one? Rising River, I think those were the first 4. Matt played on those on the album, but the problem was Matt had moved to Kansas City, and so it just made it like impossible for him to be able to get down here to rehearse and you know, play in any kind of regular way. So it just didn't. We just kind of just became a 3-piece at that point. But so, you know, as we finished up this album and you know, we were getting together and rehearsing more again as a band, like I guess through 2020. You know, we were looking at setting up this European tour for this coming summer, and some of these new songs, there's some parts where I just felt like, man, it'd really be beneficial to have another guitar player to help cover some of this stuff, and make it a little bit easier on me in a live situation to play through. And some of these songs are a little bit harder too. And so, you know, I just thought about Matt, and he's still living in Kansas City, but I thought, well, maybe we can get him to come down here and, you know, rehearse every now and then with us and get him up to speed, and we'll take him on the tour with us. And so he's been doing that, and it's been really cool to have him back jamming with us again. He was pretty influential on my guitar playing years ago, and
Okay.
so it's nice to have him back.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. See, I also, in the press release, it states that this is now for the new record, for the Singularity. It says that it's the most adventurous and exploratory record yet for the band. So, I mean, how so? Is that in terms of musically, lyrically, or both?
I would say probably musically. I mean, lyrically, it kind of follows along similar themes that we've done before, but I'd say musically, it's like there's some more like with the addition of Zach in the band.
Mhm.
He really brought a lot of his personality and just a whole new aspect to the bass playing, and it really shaped the album in a lot of ways. I think with him, he added a lot of very creative like counterpoint to the riffs and the guitar parts, and just really made things his own in a lot of ways, which helped to sort of free up us, ideas in other ways. Like like one of the songs, I'm not sure if you haven't heard the whole album yet or not, but like one of the songs called "The Oracle" is
Mhm.
very much more. It's got a lot of more like jazz fusion kind of influence going on, and
Mhm.
more jaminess, and you know Zach really was instrumental in making like that song in particular happen. And as cool as it is, it's actually one of my favorites on the album.
Mhm.
So I think also in general, like the songwriting oftentimes is very influenced by what I'm listening to at the moment, just
Okay.
whatever I'm playing a lot. And I had gone through a phase a few years ago where I was just listening to a ton of Mahavishnu Orchestra, John McCall, and that really influenced a lot of the thinking in terms of songwriting and really like harmonic approach to things, and then sort of the vibe of a lot of the songs.
Sure. Mhm. Yeah, no doubt. Well, one of the things too, let's talk about, I guess, the songs. Let's talk about the first single, "The Witching Chamber," which to me, it sounds like you kind of went back to sort of like that original Wolfat sort of sound and tone. I thought "Midnight Cometh" was definitely kind of more of a straightforward, sort of a stoner rock with some added extra fuzz than what you guys normally do. And when I was listening to "The Witching Chamber," even "Orphans of the Singe" as well, to me at least, it has that Southern doomy blues vibe that you guys are traditionally known for. So I guess, I mean, did you, like you said, I mean, you were just talking about how you really influence usually whatever you listen to at the time sort of influences you, how you write and record. What was it, I guess, that was sort of influencing you now on the Singularity? I mean, talk a bit about the musical approach, what you were going for with this record.
Well, it's funny you mentioned, yeah, Witching Chamber. It to me, it seems like maybe the most traditionally low fat of the songs
Hmm.
on the album, and it is kind of a return to some of the earlier vibes, which like early on with low fat, like the original conception was very much be like a very heavy trancey blues kind of thing, and then just kind of naturally evolved beyond that. But Witching Chamber to me is kind of going back to that vibe.
Hmm.
Um, and I mentioned those listening to a lot of Mahavishnu, but I also kind of went through a phase of like revisiting a lot of older kind of what I would call classic era stoner rock records, like
Okay.
the late '90s and early 2000s, and kind of like revisiting stuff that got me into the style in the first place. And so I
Hmm.
think that was also somewhat informative as to some of the songs, like with J, for example, being one of those.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, you could definitely, like I said, yeah, definitely to me sounds like it's definitely going back to that old school, yeah, low fat sound from what I've heard. Obviously, with some, like you guys always do, you always have changes on your albums, so there's always a little bit of a twist to it. But I definitely think it's definitely gone back to that sort of original sound. And same with the song structures on for instance, the two singles. And what I love about the band is how you guys with these songs especially, you start off, you've got sort of that southern twang, doom metal riff that sort of rides on for a bit. Then it kicks into that sort of mid-tempo, like metal bridge that you guys always do. You always keep that metallic sound in there, and then it sort of leads right into sort of like a 70s prototype of Hendrix sort of pre-finale, and then you end with that another sort of doomy twangy blues riff. Now with Wolf, I mean, because you guys have such a variety of influences and styles in your sound, as well as the fact that your songs are yeah, I would say give or take about 7 to 8 minutes on average. You purposely, try and I guess incorporate like a different and particular sound or influence into each part of the song so that the song sort of stays, interesting and fresh where you're not really playing sort of the same style on each part of the song. Is that how it writes when you kind of, excuse me, how it works when you sort of, write the songs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's consciously that way, as far as
Okay.
I don't necessarily consciously think, oh, this we need to do like this kind of thing here and this kind of thing here, but it's maybe unconsciously that's probably how it is. I mean, because
Okay.
A lot of the sections, like I can think of pretty much all the various sections of a song kind of have like maybe a couple different uh influences in terms of something else I listened to where I was like, oh man, that's a really cool groove there, or that's a really cool vibe in that thing, and I want to
Mhm.
kind of do something along those lines. And
Mhm.
so there is that like which goes back to like things that I'm listening to at the time. It just gives me ideas of like, oh, I want to do something similar. And so
Mhm.
it's but the songs, they end up being really long, and they're not supposed to necessarily be long, but I think it's just I have ideas and try and fit all this
Into it.
stuff into a song,
Mhm.
because it's like, we have like this one groove going on, and like maybe and then go to the chorus, but then it's like, oh, okay, now it'd be cool to like maybe go to this for that after that. And then,
Mhm.
and then that gives you an idea of like, oh, well, this could like totally morph into this other groove that just kind of comes, not, organically comes out of. And
Mhm.
so then I end up, oh wow, now we're at like 12 minutes. But but it's fine, I guess, because I like it, and other people seem to like it, and I but and I don't want to have like a song that just goes nowhere and gets boring, and I mean, I do want there to be interest and it to be kind of a journey that you're taking on, to go through the song, and you're
Mhm.
going different places and visiting different feelings and vibes, and
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is, have you guys, has anybody, in, say on any labels, anybody in the industry ever, I would say ask or suggest for you guys to maybe shorten your songs to like that 4 to 6 minutes range? Now, just because, obviously
yeah, I know, yeah.
your common hard rock and metal fan usually has like a 3 to 5 minute attention span, so, does anyone ever say like, because you guys did really get a lot of, really great exposure and a lot of mentions in big publications over the years. I know with the Conjuring, especially since then, you guys have really caught on with a lot of the metal and hard rock media, not just the subgenre sort of stoner doom stuff. It's just in
Hmm.
general. I think you guys were on Classic Rock Magazine. I think you guys had
Yeah,
I mentioned some years ago. So has
yeah.
anyone ever sort of like suggested you guys maybe to do that? I'm glad you don't, because I like the long songs, but do you ever get that from people that try to convince you to shorten your songs?
Actually, believe it or not, we have not gotten that, which,
Oh, okay.
I've thought about it, and like, and to me, we do have some what I would call our, radio songs like Lost Highway or something that are shorter, but
Mhm,
that means like 5.5 minutes or something. But
mhm,
it's I, that's never really been our focus as far as, we're not looking to get a single on the radio necessarily. I mean, it'd be awesome,
mhm,
but that's not really ever been what we've wanted to do. And we're
mhm.
just more focused on just trying to play the music that organically feels right for what we are, and somehow that ends up being 12 minute songs. but
Sure, yeah.
so I don't know. It's just I've never. I mean, I get the idea of doing that, and I don't know. I don't know that it would be beneficial for us to do that, really, just because I think things would feel forced in trying to make them
Mm,
fit into a certain framework.
sure, it wouldn't feel like it's you guys pretty much, yeah. Yeah. No doubt. Well, the other thing you mentioned before, you've said the word a few times, about 2 or 3 times, is the word groove. I think that's one of the things that separates Wolfat, I think, from the rest of the pack in your genre, is that you guys have the groove metal elements in your sound. I can't think of any other band really in the genre that incorporates that grooviness with doom metal. And I remember I read a quote. I think it was on something I read about you guys. I remember this journalist said that he explains your guys' sound, which I think is perfect explanation. It's metal heavy, but rolls like rock. And I think that's exactly like just a perfect, explanation of what your guys' sound is. I mean, how important is it for you to like include and incorporate those groove metal elements to your sound? Because I mean, you definitely, one thing about Wolfat is you guys definitely keep and really keep the metal and like I said, that groovy metal into your sound, which I don't usually hear with a lot of the other bands in that genre.
Well, to me, it's like it's incredible. It's really important to me because, like, I came like, heavier music was not my first thing that I was drawn to musically. I was more of a jazz guy,
Okay.
and really, ultimately, it all comes down to the blues to me because the
Mhm.
blues is something that's like just always spoken to me deeply my whole life,
Mhm.
and that's how I ended up finding heavier music was through like Black Sabbath and through you know heavier rock that was blues based essentially. And
Mhm.
so to me it all since ultimately metal is uh, harkens back to Black Sabbath, and Black Sabbath was essentially a blues band to start with.
Mhm.
It all comes from that blues foundation. And a big part of that, in addition to just the melodic aspect of it and the melodic language of it, is the groove aspect of it, and the and
Mhm.
the, the sort of riff based grooviness of it. And so to me, that's like a vital core element of what to me rock and roll or even metal should have as part of it. And like
Mhm.
some of the earliest rock stuff like ZZ Top, the ZZ Top albums are like some of the grooviest things
Oh yeah.
ever. And that,
Mhm.
ZZ Top was hugely influential on, I mean, like when I first was really listening to rock and leading down the road towards heavier stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah,
like,
no,
it's just like, it's got to me, it's like, it's got to have that,
it's gotta have the blues in
to
it.
be
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, and speaking of the blues and with the heavier blues sound, I mean, you guys now, I mean, you've been together, I know close to 20 years now. I know 2006 is when you put out your first record, The Gathering Dark. And that scene really, that really heavy blues rock, scene in Texas is like really now like sort of the biggest sort of, rock or metal scene, I think, in this country, at least from my
Yeah.
estimation. I mean, bands are relocating there from all over the place, especially in Austin.
Yeah.
But bands like you guys, the Sword, I mean, you guys are really the ones that were the OGs of this sound in Texas there in the mid 2000s. I mean, when you look back, when you guys first started and released, The Gathering Dark, a classic record. I mean, did you guys ever think you would, see not only this sound become as big as it is, but just the scene in Texas take off like it is now? I mean, talk a bit, I guess, about how you've seen the sound and scene grow since you guys put out your first record back in 2006.
Yeah. It actually, yeah, it's kind of amazing. I mean, it's it's like Texas is like the Sweden of of the US or something. But yeah,
Mhm.
when early on it was, I remember when we were first started playing some local gigs, I did, I kind of discovered there was like this sort of a, nascent scene of like there were other like-minded people around.
Mhm.
I just didn't see any bands really playing very often, but there were bands kind of being started around the same time, and it kind of grew. Like yeah, I don't know, it did seem to sort of happen all around at the same time, even though it was maybe not connected. Like I remember when the Sword first came out, that it
Mhm.
was like that was just mind blowing at the time, and it was sort of like, oh wow, they're doing something kind of along the same lines.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think the Sword was probably really instrumental in the Texas scene in general. But now there's
Mhm.
so many awesome bands in Texas. Houston, San Antonio,
Mhm.
Dallas. And that maybe is actually a helpful thing about it is you can do like a little small tour run throughout
Just in Texas,
the
yeah.
state, yeah,
Mhm.
and do place places fairly regularly, and which helps to build the whole scene in general, I think.
Yeah. No, no doubt. It's really impressive. Yeah, what's going on down there. And of course, like you guys are on, one of the labels that obviously is really leading the charge that with Ripple. I mean, whenever I talk to bands from Texas, I always say they should open an office down there because they've signed so many bands down there,
Yeah.
and it's just such a huge scene, obviously. I mean, Obviously, they got the great Ripple Fest, Texas. That's this year looks like it's going to be,
Yeah.
obviously insane. Any chance you guys might get on that? I mean, actually, let's get into playing live shows. I mean, I know, like you said, you mentioned you were doing a European tour in the summer. I also saw you guys are playing at the Alcatraz Festival in Belgium. I guess go ahead and talk about what your guys' plans is for live performance to promote the new record.
Well, yeah, we have that European tour in the works, being booked right now. And we're actually not going to do that Ripple Fest Texas because of that, because it's like
Okay.
right before we leave.
Sometime. Okay.
And but yeah, that lineup looks pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the European tour is coming up, which we're really excited about, which ends with Alcatraz Fest in Belgium. So that's the big thing we have coming up. We have a plan on doing an Austin and a Houston show in June, which will be our first shows in like 2 years, so before the pandemic actually. But and after that, I'm not sure. We're still thinking about what's going to happen after that. That's the first thing.
Very cool. Very good. And I also saw that, you guys, I know obviously the new record's coming out in May, but I believe I saw there's also a couple of re-releases coming out as well. Talk about what else you got coming out. I think it's Totem Cat, I think, releasing some of the old records.
Yeah, so Totem Cat in France they're doing repressings of Black Code and The Conjuring.
Okay.
Which we're still waiting on the vinyl. I know you and we was hoping to have that out in December, but it's just the backup of the
backlog.
Yeah, so we're hoping any day now that vinyl will show up in France and we'll send it to us. We'll have it to sell. But also Ripple has been doing re-releases of the first 3 albums. So Psychedelic Not was re-released like I said, about a year ago, and then Gathering Dark. Again, we're waiting on vinyl, but it was supposed to happen a couple months ago, but from what Ripple has told me, it's next in line to get completed at the plant. So hopefully that comes out soon. And then I think probably after like maybe next fall, Ripple will be re-releasing Noche Don Chupacabra, which is
very cool.
And so yeah, so I guess at that point that's pretty much that's all the records that have been re-released. But Totem Cat, we got a good relationship with Totem Cat because we put out a split with Egypt. When was that? 2013, I guess, on Totem Cat, which was a fun thing to do. And Ewan's a great guy, puts out pretty highly curated specific things. So.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, do you think, the fact that you've got all these re-releases coming out, obviously that just shows that you've got not only, a lot of your long-term fans want to, purchase a lot of those classic records, but it seems like obviously, because of how big this sound is now getting and being like we was talking about how a lot of the, epicenter for it's almost pretty much down in Texas. I mean, a lot of the younger fans must be really starting to, dig into you guys, obviously being one of the OG kind of bands from them. Do you see a lot of the younger fans in the scene really sort of climber on and getting to, really experience and get into the, the band, the last few years or so?
Yeah, I think so. I think it seems like it. I mean, I think it's becoming more of a thing in the U.S. with the younger people than it has been. I mean, in Europe, it seems like there's been a younger demographic there for a while that's been aware of this scene, but it does seem like it's changing a little bit here too. And I think things like like Psycho Las Vegas and some of the big festivals have kind of helped help get this momentum happening, with like some people that maybe were just more in the metal world and then, opening up, their eyes to like, oh, all this other stuff is going on too. That's kind of peripheral to more, straight metal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I mean, you just mentioned like Psycho Fest. I mean, you got the Desert Fest obviously happening in New York, which is, monstrous. The only thing that kind of, concerns me about, we got some of these great fests here. Obviously, we're talking about Ripple Fest. You also got Heavy Psych Sounds Fest that's happening out here in the Bay Area. But I guess my concern sometimes when I see these fests, it's great, but then also start thinking, if you look at Psycho Fest, where that started with really more of a a psychedelic doom sort of stoner festival, you started seeing Alice Cooper and industrial rock. Indie rock bands playing there and everything. That's the only thing that worries me a little bit, concerns me, is these festivals eventually will become like how Coachella became, when that started off as more of an, an independent underground sort of thing, and then the mainstream caught on to it, and then it wound up getting ruined. So that's my only. I mean, but you're right. Though, at the same time, it's great that because of these festivals, I think it is helping a lot of the younger fans. Obviously, discover a lot of stuff they normally wouldn't, which is real cool.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. That is a concern I have too, but I don't, either way. I mean, it's a good thing for now. I think that hopefully it stays somewhat focused on more underground and less huge names. But as long as that's happening, and the underground bands are getting some exposure, that's awesome.
True, and especially here in the States, where it's always been a lot tougher to do than obviously overseas in Europe and so forth. Yeah, no doubt. Well, great, Kent. Well, once again, the album is The Singularity, comes out May 6th on Ripple. And Kent, where can we send listeners to check out the band, for merch, live dates, and just to keep up with you guys in general?
Well, we have a Bandcamp page, as many bands do. It's just wofat. Whatever it is, Bandcamp.wofat or whatever. I mean, just do a search for it. It'll obviously come up. We also have our website, wofat.net, and Facebook page, Instagram, and we haven't actually announced all the tour dates yet because we don't have them all settled yet. But as soon as we do, we'll announce that on all the various Instagram, Facebook, website, all the places like that. So it'll bands in town, things like that. People can also listen on Spotify and Apple Music, all the usual places. And I think we've got another single that they're going to be putting out on, I think it's April 12th.
Okay. For
the new album too. So, and the actual release out date for the album, I believe, is May 6th. So.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, yeah. Once again, wofat, The Singularity, out May 6th. And Kent, man, thanks so much for coming on, talking to us, and look forward to seeing you guys on the road soon.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right.
When it's time to rock, it's time to tune in to Crash Course Radio. Featuring the very best of the heavier music, from Slayer to Clutch to Fear Factory, it's all in one place, Crash Course Radio. To tune in to Crash Course Radio, simply visit www.cmsradio.net. You can also tune in on the CMS Network app by opening the app, clicking the musical notes at the top right corner, and selecting Crash Course Radio from our stations. All the best heavy music is there, so you should be too. Ditch the commercial radio and make Crash Course Radio your everyday station.